The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Hold on for a second. Can we have some order? I know we're just getting back today and everybody's catching up with everybody, but we need to be able to conduct business. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Present. Alderman Boyd. Present. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Cone. Present. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Here. Alderwoman Boyd. Here. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Rhodey. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. 24 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Pastor John Watson, Jr. of Maple Temple. Before we begin the prayer today, I know we're just coming off of St. Louis. We're coming off of what has been a very violent summer. We've lost kids all across the city. And we're going to have a lot of work to do this session, so I welcome all of you back, and I thank you for all the work that you've done during that summer break. Before we begin prayer today, I'm going to ask everybody to stand and join, who's able to stand and join me in a moment of silence for all of those that we lost over the summer. So let's send some prayers to the families and friends also. And 911. Oh, and also the 9/11 victims. Pastor.
While you're yet standing. They that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall walk and not faint. I read you from the Holy Scriptures. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, as we begin another session today with our elected officials and community at large, may we start humble in spirit, helpful in attitude, and faithful in service. Keep us from worries that wear us out or from bitterness that brings us down, and from frustration that weakens our passion to serve. Help us to realize, though life may have a few difficulties and some strong disagreements, we must not allow these issues to become negative, make us disagreeable, or never allow them to weaken our faith or our ideals. Grant wisdom and courage to the president of this assembly and all our elected officials. Together may all of us walk in your ways and not faint. Into your arms we commit ourselves, our family, our community, our great city. Amen.
Join me in a round of applause for Pastor John Watson, who has so graciously joined us and continues to volunteer his time to assure that we start our meetings off correctly. We're going to suspend our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolutions calendar. Alderwoman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for courtesy resolutions calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the boards. I move that we adopt our courtesy resolution agenda today.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 22nd. Alderwoman from the 27th, would you like to approach the dais? The Alderwoman from the 27th would like the other members of the caucus who would like to join us up at the dais, join us up at the dais.
I'd like to invite the other alder people from the caucus if they would come up to, for us to do the resolution. And the prostate empowerment. Oh. You don't have on shorts. Right. Let me say, whoa. Okay. Thank you. Today we are recognizing the Empowerment Network. Melvin Shahid and his staff has been diligently working within our community citywide in regards to recognizing prostate cancer. And I think when people don't understand, and I said it earlier, that it doesn't have any color lines. Prostate cancer hits anybody, male, that is out there in the community. And so it's very apparent that we have to ensure that we get our males checked for prostate cancer. And it's not to the point it's a killing cancer. It's a point of catching it early to make sure that they detect it. My family being a part of that process, I can relate to it fully. Alderwoman Rice's family has been impacted by it. And so I think when it first happens, the only words you hear is cancer. You don't hear anything else that doctor is telling you or what's going on. And so it took me a while to even hear the diagnosis, what we could do, the plan. And so that's where Annie Rice is now with her family. They're trying to adapt to it, adjust to the situation, and be the strong caretakers to help their father go through this process. And I think a big part of the process is when you have families that come together that help that person, because all the medicine in the world won't do it unless you have love and prayer to keep people on point and not to give up on the issues. So at this time, we want to recognize Melvin Shahid, the Empower Network. Okay, the president tell me what I need to do, because I don't know what I'm doing. So you do it, Louis.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any of you all want? Any of y'all? Yeah, come.
Thank you, Mr. President, and colleagues. I know most of you know that my dad we'd had some struggles in the spring, and it was a prostate cancer diagnosis that was not caught early, and so we are We're now currently working through treatment and caring for him through treatment, and hoping for the best and praying for the best. And this is such an important organization to recognize that most men, regardless of any other demographic, will have prostate cancer at some point, will have an elevated PSA. So please get checked. Please get the blood test, have the physical exam. Encourage your brothers, your fathers, your uncles, your cousins to get checked, because when it is caught, it is very treatable when it's caught early. And so thank you to this organization for continuing awareness, continuing to educate people about this. Thank you to all of you survivors who are here. All of the men in blue ties, I believe you are all survivors. So thank you. And thank you for putting a face of hope on this instead of fear. Knowledge is power in this case, right? And so the more we know, the better we can fight together. So thank you all so much.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? The chairman of the caucus.
Certainly, I want to recognize and appreciate the organization for all the great work that they do. Being a black male over 50 now is certainly something I take very seriously. Getting annual exams to ensure that I'm not impacted by it. And being informed about it, it's so important. Most men, for some reason, we just don't want to get our checkups. We just think somehow we're immoral, what'll happen is going to happen. But prevention is truly the key. And there are a lot of great organizations out here that can talk to us, that can help us, that can walk with us, as in Annie Wright's case, when it gets to a point where it's not as treatable. It's just so important. I can't say enough about taking care of men's health. It's vitally important. I just want to thank Mr. Shahid for all the work that he does. I've been knowing this brother for over a decade now, doing this great work. And again, shout out to all the survivors, the people who got the testing and who loved ones certainly appreciate you being here today. Because it's important. You have a lot of people that love you, that care about you, that's counting on you. So men, let's do the right thing and let's make sure we get checked. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 14th.
I would just like to encourage everybody to take good care of themselves. Cancer is an insidious disease, and it can be headed off with frequent checkups, male, female, and you guys are really bad about going to getting your doctor appointments. So you need to take up, if you don't have a woman there making it for you, you do it. And I think that we all need to be aware of the wonderful medical services we have here in the city of St. Louis. We have cutting-edge medical treatment for diseases, and I think that we all need to be better stewards of our health. And you guys, get on it.
All right. Alderman from the 4th.
I think this is a very, very important event and situation that men are going through. Not just black men, but white men. We all should be up on this stage because it has no favorite person or no favorite race. I move that we embank this.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please create another copy of this resolution in bank.
So noted.
Back to the president.
Alderman from the 19th.
Come on over here, Melody. You see, this young man right here, when it's about determination, you see, I remember when he started. You kicked off the program in the Metropolitan Village Apartments. Right. You got the ambassadors, the people who lived there to support you, right. And they were right there with you every move. But you didn't have $1 million. You didn't have big corporate support. You didn't have any of that. but you were determined. And that's what we need more of for this society. We have a culture that is in jeopardy right now, but when we continue to have people like you making a difference, we thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I am just so grateful for all the work that you all have done and continue to do to raise awareness. As you know, and I told you before, my father had prostate cancer. He since has passed away, but it was not prostate cancer that got him, because he went out and got tested, and he did everything that he needed to do to assure that it was treated, and his family and everybody rallied around him, and he was able to get past prostate cancer. So I thank you for that. I thank you for raising awareness for men all across the city of St. Louis and across this region. It is making a difference in lives. Melvie, when you were diagnosed, you could have just curled up in the corner and done nothing. You chose to stand, and you chose to create an organization so that other people would go out and get tested and do better and be there for their families and be able to watch their kids grow up. So I thank you for that, Melvie. I thank you for your commitment to change all across this region, which is spreading across our state, and it has made a significant difference. And I'm telling you, for a person that has received the benefit of your organization firsthand, and I want to thank you for that. Let's give them a big round of applause, and thank you all to all the survivors.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to present the resolution that's embanked. So our clerk is pretty on top of things. And so, whereas this Honorable Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis has made aware of the annual Prostate Awareness Month. And prostate is the most common cancer affecting men and African American men in particular. And African American men 35 and older are 56% more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and 2.5 times more likely to die from prostate cancer. And early detection is key for the effective management of prostate cancer. By becoming a part of Prostate Cancer Awareness Coalition is a program that others prostate-specific antigen, I left my glasses, screening and Prostate Awareness Month. Since its inception, has heightened prostate cancer awareness and education in the St. Louis community by assisting and supporting thousands of men and their families. And in his 2014 presidential proclamation, President Barack Obama stated in print that as part of the Affordable Care Act, more options for quality, affordable health coverage available and new protection are in place, expanding access to life-saving care for millions of Americans, including those impacted by prostate cancer. Whereas insurance companies can no longer deny coverage due to pre-existing conditions such as cancer or deny participation in an improved clinical trial for any life-threatening disease. Men fighting prostate cancer are no longer faced with animal or lifetime dollar limits on coverage that could corrupt their treatments. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberation in recognition Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and we further direct the clerk of the board to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and to prepare a commemorative copy to the end that it may be presented to our honoree at a time, place deemed appropriate. So, you want to say that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm the Executive Director of the Empowerment Network. I've been with Melvie for the past 5 years since I retired from the Senate, It has been an eye-opening experience. It has been very heartwarming, and it has been heartbreaking at some times. As the ED, I bring you greetings from Mr. Shaheed, from our board of directors, from our survivors. We have 587 men in our database as survivors. We've had a year, that's exactly right. Last year, we did not lose one survivor. We got through a year with no deaths whatsoever, which says a lot about, yes, absolutely. It says a lot about the medical care that is available here in the city of St. Louis. WashU is the CDC NIH lead in the region, and they're the first ones to get any cutting edge information or technology. So again, on behalf of myself, Mr. Shaheed, our Speakers Bureau members, our prayer team members, we bring you greetings and heartfelt thanks for this recognition this morning for September National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you.
And now we're as you know, Melvie, this resolution is the highest honor the board has to give any organization or individual. What it does is cements in time some of your organization's many contributions up until this point. So 100, 200 years from now, when people look back and research the records of the city and understand how we've rose to address the issues of prostate cancer, and our prostate cancer 200 years from now will be a thing of the past. They will read about your organization and understand the role that you and my senator played and all the survivors played in turning this around. So let's give them a big round of applause.
To the Honorable Board, the President, and to my Alderwoman, 27 Ward Alderman Panel Board, I am honored to be here today. When I was here about 6 or 7 years ago, my president taught me a quote. He said, "Stay alive, get tested by 35." So we're encouraging men in the St. Louis, stay alive, get tested by 35. So we're encouraging men in the St. Louis community to get tested for prostate cancer. It's a simple blood test, and I want to thank all the beautiful caregivers, all the beautiful wives and the mothers who stood beside us when we could not stand beside ourselves. Thank you for helping us, giving us that gentle push right into the doctor's office. Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask the survivors and the other family members if you all want to join us over here for a photo, and if you all they go down for the photo. Well, they're getting lined up. Let's give a shout out to our state representative, Mr. Carter. Thank you for being here, Representative. And thanks for all your work. I know Greg was one of the early people who worked with Melvie to get this established, so your family has played a key role in this, so thank you for all the work and all the commitment from your family. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolutions calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. That will return to our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm delighted to have as my honored guest today the new Executive Director of the St. Louis Agency on Training and Employment, Howard Hayes. Howard, could you stand up for us?
Welcome.
I think many of us know Howard already. Howard was a longtime employee of SLDC. Then he went over to work for Parrott Corporation, one of our general contractors here in St. Louis, and he's come back to take on the task of helping with Slate. And we're very happy to have him, and I appreciate your service, Howard, and he's a great 7th Ward resident, and welcome back.
All right. Alderman from the 12th.
Mr. President, go ahead. I'll yield to the Alderwoman from the 14th.
Alderwoman from the 14th.
That is so kind of you. I would like to have as my honored guest Demetrius Alfred from Firefighters Local 73 and Nathan Lett. Well, Nathan left. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman from the 12th.
Well, Mr. President, she stole my guess, but that's okay. I'd like to introduce Brian Sullivan from the Board of Elections. He's a constituent in my ward. And it looks like Mr. Dave Sweeney under all that hair up there, who used to be the clerk of the Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
All right. Well, we also have up in the galleries Moms Demand Action. Let's give them a big round of applause and thank you for fighting all across this nation for common sense gun laws. And I'm so appreciative of all their work. Alderman from the 27th.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome my honored guest, my husband, my friend, my cancer survivor, Nathan
Oh,
Boyd.
man. Alderman from the 23rd. Thank you. He's introducing Greg Myers up in the galleries. Let's give Greg a big round of applause. Thank you all. Alderman from the 21st.
All right. Budget cuts. Okay.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to welcome Ms. Serena Griffin from the Circuit Attorney's Office, and also Mr. Percy Green III, the new president of the Firefighters Institute for Racial Equality. Thank you.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to introduce my son, William. It's my honor, guest. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Going once, going twice. Alderman from the 10th like to wrap us up.
I wasn't aware the Alderman from the 8th, Mr. Conway, came back to visit us lately. I guess he was using this microphone. We're gathered here on Friday the 13th, which means we should all leave right now before we attempt to do any business. But this is Hug Your Boss Day, so be careful in the chambers later, Mr. President. And most importantly, in 1969, Scooby-Doo debuted on CBS, giving the Alderman from the 23rd a reason to live. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes dated July 12th, 2019.
Moved by Alderman from the 22nd, second by Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the alderman's mailboxes. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Locust Central Special Business District. The appointment of Mr. Thayer Weaver, a property owner representing renters in the district, whose term will expire December 31st, 2021. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz and Mayor.
Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the mayor's appointments to the Locust Central Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. At this time, I'd like to postpone that appointment till the end of the month. Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. The appointment has been withdrawn by the sponsor.
So noted. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for the appointment to the Tax Increment Financing Commission. The appointment of Mr. Arthur Perry as the property owner representative who resides in the 28th Ward, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Philip Kevner as a finance representative who resides in the 12th Ward, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz and Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Tax Increment Financing Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to approve the mayor's appointments to the TIF Commission.
Moved by Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Second by Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
All right. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 78 as amended on the third reading consent calendar.
So noted.
Would anyone like to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Madam Clerk, please move Board Bill 34 as amended to the regular third reading calendar at the request of sponsor.
So noted.
Would anyone like to take any further bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? We'll dispense with line items 7 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the First Amendment to Banking Concession Agreement AL 278 between the city and U.S. Bank National Association, containing the severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 96, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis, owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the 7th Amended and Restated Food and Beverage Concession Agreement, AL 110, with Host International, Inc., between the city and Host International, Inc., containing the severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 97, sponsored by President Reed, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making a supplemental appropriation to the annual budget ordinance 70963 for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020, amounting to the sum of $3,500,000 for the purpose of purchasing body-worn cameras for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 98, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the Olive West Community Improvement District, establishing the Olive West Community Improvement District, reaffirming certain findings of blighting and finding a public purpose for the establishment of the Olive West Community Improvement District. Board Bill 99, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis, owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the Second Amended to Operating Agreement for Management and Operation of Parking Facilities Services, AL 267, between the city and ABM Aviation, Inc., containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 100, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller on behalf of the City of St. Louis, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to accept and execute on behalf of the city a certain airport aid agreement offered by the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the marketing and promotion of the air service at the airport for a maximum obligation of $515,000 for the reimbursement of direct costs associated with the projects funded under the grant agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 101, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, an ordinance submitting to the voters of the City of St. Louis a proposed revision to Article 16, Section 3 of the Charter to require the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to, at least 90 days prior to the start of each fiscal year, submit to the Board of Aldermen a proposed annual budget ordinance, and to permit the Board of Aldermen to reduce or increase the amount of any budget item except those fixed by statute for payment of principal or interest of city debt, or to meet ordinance obligations, and to add new items so as long as budget balances, and if the Board of Estimate and Apportionment fails to submit a budget ordinance to the Board of Aldermen as required, the budget director shall submit to the board at least 90 days prior to the fiscal year an estimate of revenues for the fiscal year, a statement of table of organizations, and all expected city budget requirements from which the board shall approve a budget. Board Bill 102, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, an ordinance revising Section 3 of Ordinance Number 70333, requiring the Director of Traffic to have the approval of the Board of Public Service with regard to the development and promulgation of the City of St. Louis traffic calming policy, to instead require the approval of the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 103, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an amended, restated parcel development agreement by and among the City of St. Louis, Missouri Northside Regeneration, LLC, the Northside Urgent Care Property, LLC, NSQA LICB, LLC, and the HGP Hospital Corp., prescribing the form and details of said amended and restated parcel development agreement, authorizing certain actions by city officials, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 104, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance amending the redevelopment plan for the Gravois Morganford redevelopment area. Board Bill 105, sponsored by President Reed, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and Alderwoman Pam Boyd. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment making a supplemental appropriation to the annual budget ordinance 70963 for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020, amounting to the sum of $8 million for the purpose of providing funding for the Violence Prevention Alternative Program, Cure Violence, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 106, sponsored by President Reed and the following alderpersons: Vaccaro, Davis, Coder, Middlebrook, Clark Hubbard, Muhammad, Murphy, Pam Boyd, Rice, and Gracia, and Navarro. An ordinance establishing reporting requirements for licensees selling firearms to report failures of a background check system when a firearm purchase is denied within the limits of the City of St. Louis, and containing a severability and an emergency clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Alderman from the 21st.
Suspend the rules to introduce Board Bill 107.
Board Bill 107. Is it on everyone's desk? Alderman, is it on everyone's desk?
Yes, sir.
All right. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 21st. Entertain a second on that motion, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Suspend the rules for the placement of Board Bill 107 on the first reading calendar. It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Rice, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Morton, Alderman Ornowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Todd, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed, Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Ornowitz, 25 aye votes and 1 present.
By a vote, staying the motion, Alderman from the 21st, and introduce Board Bill 107. Madam Clerk, please read Board Bill 107 into the record.
Board Bill 107, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, an ordinance directing that the City of St. Louis Division of Police establish establish 9 police districts, the boundaries of which shall be drawn in accordance with the map set forth in Exhibit A attached hereto, and to extend the Commissioner of the City of St. Louis Division of Police deems reasonable and appropriate in the light of changing community and law enforcement needs. Division of Police resources, including officers, shall be appropriated equally amongst the 9 police districts and each police district. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Madam Clerk, please assign Board Bill 107 to Public Safety.
So noted.
Reference to committee.
To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 95, 96, 99, and 100. To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 97, 105, 106, and 107. To Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 98, 101. To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 102. To the HUDS Committee, 103 and 104. That is the extent of reference to committee.
We will dispense with line items 13 through 16. Third reading consent.
Board Bill 78 as amended.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of third reading consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 27th. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderwoman Spencer. (26 aye votes and 1 present).
By the vote, you stand the motion, Alderman from the 22nd, and third read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. Third reading report of engrossments.
Board Bill 34 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard. An ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis a proposal to revise Section 2 of Article 8 of the City of St. Louis Charter, which requires city employees to reside within the boundaries of the City of St. Louis and thus allow said employees, except for city agencies and department directors appointed by the mayor, to reside outside of the boundaries of the City of St. Louis, and providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 14th, you recognize on third reading and final passage, Board Bill 34 as amended.
Board Bill 34 AA is a proposal.
You'd like to make the motion first.
I'd like to make a motion to move
To third reading and final passage.
Move Board Bill 34 AA to final passage.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Alderman, please proceed.
I'm
Please.
sorry.
Yeah.
I would like to call the question for a vote. This bill would put before the voters of the city of St. Louis to amend the, I'm sorry.
All right. Take time. It's been a long summer. We were
To
rushing.
amend the charter of the city of St. Louis to provide for people to work in the city of St. Louis that do not live in the city of St. Louis. The Division of Personnel would be able to accept applicants from the region regardless of where they live. They would be able to hire regardless without consideration of whether people live within the boundaries of the city. There would be no qualification for people to relocate within the city boundaries after the probation period of 90 days.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We do, obviously, as evidenced by our $24 million surplus, based largely on lack of positions being filled over the last year, clearly have an issue with filling positions in the city of St. Louis, some of which may be related to, there's a myriad of issues that are really driving why we are not filling all these positions. I think it's really a discussion that we need to have holistically and look at not only why those positions have remained unfilled, but we have to remember that when we have unfilled positions, we're not serving the citizens of the city of St. Louis in the way in which we promised we would do by budgetary means. I have to apologize. I don't have the amendments completed at this moment. They're getting printed. I didn't know this bill was coming before us today until I read about it in the paper yesterday. But I do have some amendments I'd like the board to consider as part of the discussion on the potential of eliminating the residency requirement in the city of St. Louis. There are essentially three amendments I'd like this body to consider, one of which would be that the residency bill would only pertain to new employees. I think this is worthy of discussion. We have a lot of employees that reside within the city of St. Louis, love living in the city of St. Louis. I'm not suggesting that we force people to continue living here, but certainly recognizing that before we completely eliminate the residency requirement, maybe take a step towards that by first requiring some very significant local recruitment. I'd like to see us require 60 days of local recruiting before we expand our search outside of the city of St. Louis. I'd like to make sure that in expanding the residency requirement, we are doing our due diligence as a city to recruit locally. And in order to ensure that, I'm proposing that we require the Civil Service Commission to come before the Board of Aldermen on an annual basis with a detailed report of hiring practices and recruitment practices for the previous year so that we can take a look at what we're doing to recruit and taking a look at our salaries and other things that really play into whether or not we're able to fill those positions. And I think rather than just simply considering eliminating the residency requirement entirely, we take a look at moving in a direction that could increase hiring without entirely removing that. And with that, I'll take questions from my colleagues on the amendment as our clerk is, or excuse me, as our legal counsel is preparing the amendment in legal form.
Please inform the clerk that you cannot amend the bill on third reading calendar. You have to amend it on the perfection calendar. So where the bill sits right now, we cannot amend it. Now, if you would like to amend it, what you would have to do is move, having voted on the prevailing side, if anyone voted on the prevailing side when we perfected the bill prior to going off of on summer break, they could move to reconsider the vote to move the bill back to the perfection calendar. Other than that, it cannot be amended where it sits.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with that, I'd just like to say that having an amendment prepared or having an amended bill prepared, I'd like my colleagues to consider an alternative to what we currently have before us.
All right. Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Not the clerk, excuse me. I misspoke. Please inform the attorney, not the clerk, but the attorney that what he's attempting to do, we cannot do. All right. Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This isn't an issue that came up overnight. I think we've been working on this bill for almost a year now. You know, I worked 35 years with the city, and I plan on going nowhere. We haven't been filling jobs or in Department of Personnel. We've even changed, you know, people with a police record or a convicted felon can apply for jobs, certain jobs, not all of them, but we're just not filling them. The citizens, I have over 380 trees on my trim list since 2010 before I was an alderman to present. And for them not to get them services like that, and we're always raising taxes, is not fair to the citizens. I think when you open up the residency, it brings in more qualified people. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, Department of Personnel, I worked there for 10 years. They always have 3 or 4 job fairs a year. They have it at Harris Stowe, they've had it at SLU, they have it here, and they've had it there. I mean, it's time we start allowing the citizens to get the services they pay for. You know, I'm not going anywhere even when my time's done as an alderman. I love the city of St. Louis, but you know, citizens are paying taxes out there. We need to make sure they're taken care of. And one alderwoman said they're only hiring part-time jobs. That's not true. There's full-time jobs open. I know there's at least 9 or 10 open in the streets department they can't even fill. So, you know, with that, I just urge my colleagues to vote and put it on the ballot and let the taxpayers decide what it should do since they're paying. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I oppose this going on our ballot because the number one reason I think that in many cases we test people, and those jobs you can do them without a test. Sometimes tests discriminate against people. I don't think there's one job. First of all, let's talk about some of the forestry. The reason jobs are not filled because the people are not paid enough, and those are part-time jobs. And secondly, you don't need a test to know that the law says that grass should be 7 inches, and in some wards I heard from the alderman from the 4th is 8 feet tall. So I don't know how you would need a test. We have potholes all over. We have potholes in our ward and many other things, services that are not being provided. The issue is not bringing more people into qualified people. The issue is getting people who are supervising the workers to do their job. And there's not one job, including the top job in this city, that no one can do. We have millions of dollars we are wasting in taxpayers' money, and we are not getting the services in my ward. And we don't need to be bringing more people in. We need to hire more people in this city, because that's why we have crime. That's why we have these killings, because we have people who want jobs, they can't get jobs, they put up barriers talking about you need a test. You don't need a test. What we need is the commitment to provide services to the residents of this city. For example, in the Parks Department, we have these rangers. We have 0 rangers in my ward that I've seen, and I walk the ward all the time. So do you need qualifications to pass the test? Once you pass the test and then you don't do the job? Yeah, you can pass a test. I see geniuses pass all kinds of tests. I don't know how they got these jobs as supervisors of these different departments that are not serving my ward. They pass tests. So I'm saying what we need to do is provide some services to the residents make a commitment to hire people full-time, make a commitment to provide services to our residents, make a commitment to reduce gun violence by having programs and prevention programs. In this city, they removed thousands of recreational programs. Now in my ward, during the summer, 3 parks, 0 programs. What are the people doing in those offices? Yeah, they pass civil service tests. Do they run programs for people and do they provide services? Absolutely not. So what we need to do then, maybe open up a testing agency. You pass the test. Once you do all of these great scores on these tests, but you can't do the job. Show me in my ward in many cases where the job is being done. The job is not getting done. So we do not need more people passing tests. We have highly qualified people right now. I'm saying give the people in my ward the jobs, the benefits, full-time jobs, vacation, retirement, great pay. And these people are qualified and they will do the job. I'm asking my colleagues, please vote against putting it on the ballot because it's a waste of taxpayers' money.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, once again, we've talked about this before. We've had hearings. We've talked to the director there and personnel. Not once since I have been an alderman in this city have we had a job for downstairs in a rotunda. We continue to say that we post up. We just post online that these jobs are available. But we don't ensure that the residents, the ones who are qualified in the city of St. Louis, are properly notified that these jobs exist. We ourselves send people who are looking for jobs to these departments to apply for these jobs, and it takes them 6 months just to get an interview. We have people waiting right now. I have folks that I have worked with to try to get jobs within the city of St. Louis, and they're continually waiting, interview after interview. And it's not that they're not qualified. We don't want to hire people in this city. I don't understand what the underlying premise for this is. It's not about residency. This is about control. It's about controlling tax dollars. See, we are a dwindling city at this particular point. Our population has been dwindling for over 10 or 15 years. We're at, about 300, maybe 311 right now, 311,000 people? Our tax dollars, every single time you spend $1 in the city, some of those tax dollars come back. So which means that we have some type of revolving door with our money when you are giving out money from the city and the residents live here in the city. They pay their taxes in the city. They go to the stores in the city. They buy their groceries in the city. They get their gas in the city. But when you come to the city and you get paid $50,000 or $30,000 and you take that check and you drive back out to the county and you spend your tax dollars in the county, you get your food in the county, you get your gas in the county, you pay your real estate taxes in the county. Not only are we losing a resident, but we lose a tax base. So which means the bills for the city and the individuals who lean on services that need to be provided by the residents in the city of St. Louis will lose those services. We won't have those jobs. We will be looking for more funding, which is what we're doing on a continual basis now, asking for dollars for this, asking for dollars for that. We got to go beg for grants from all over the state and from the federal government for doing simple things that should already be done. If we have thousands of individuals pouring into this city and taking our tax dollars out, then, we have to find a way to replace those tax dollars that we are losing. And, I cannot understand for the life of me why it is that we are continually saying that we don't have qualified individuals in the city to work for the city. I mean, realistically, right? We just lost Amazon because they said we don't have a qualified base of workers, right? So if we ourselves are saying we can't even cut the grass, right? We can't find qualified people to do, jobs that aren't even that technologically advanced or extensive. What is it that we're saying to these big corporations that we would like to come in? What are we saying to those big entities that we would like to come in and place their bases here in the city of St. Louis and provide jobs for us? We're saying we can't even handle it. We can't find jobs for the city. Why would they want to come put billions of dollars within the city of St. Louis when we ourselves can't find qualified workers? What statement are we making to the rest of the state? What statement are we making to the rest of the individuals and corporations throughout the entire United States? That we're petitioning and saying this is a new startup hub. This is a place where you can come and grow your business. But wait, we don't have qualified workers. You know, we can't get people to cut the grass. We can't get people to adequately fix the streets. That's false. And it's wrong for us to it's wrong for us to put that type of stigma out about the city. We already have too many bad things that are plaguing us right now. People don't want to live here. They don't want to grow their children here. They don't want to go to our schools. That's not based on we got bad schools. That's based on we're not putting the energy where it needs to be to ensure that we're raising people up in this city to come back and give what they have into the city. You get out or get back what you put in, and we're not putting into our residents. We don't have a gang of training to ensure that whatever you're saying these people are not qualified for, that they can get trained to be qualified for. Why are we looking out for the outside to help what we need to have done on the inside of our city? You know, we talk about policing. We short, 150 officers? It's not about the officers. Because the same amount of officers that we are graduating in classes, those same officers are leaving the city. Why are they leaving? Why are they going to the county after they get the best training that they can get here in the city of St. Louis? We talk about this is about officers. I don't care how many officers you put on the street, it is not going to change the trajectory of where this city is headed. Kids will still continually get murdered. People shoot off right in front of the police. So let's stop that stigma of if we had more police officers, we'd have more of this going on, because it's false. We have a cultural issue in this city. The city itself has a cultural issue. We have a racially divided city in which a book that the mayor just created in 2018 blatantly states, and it's put out. We all walk around here within this board of aldermen and throughout the city of St. Louis like these things don't plague us. These are not the issues that we should be dealing with. What is the root cause of why we cannot find qualified workers in this city? And if you bring in thousands of individuals from across the state or wherever it is that they come from, what does that say to the people who live in the city of St. Louis? And how is it are we going to retain those individuals? And then aside from that, where are they going to get jobs from? Realistically, we talk about poverty. We talk about opportunity. We talk about lack of opportunity. But yet we want to give all of the opportunity that we have for people in the city of St. Louis to be a part of the city of St. Louis to those who don't live here. I think that is a continuous problem for us if we continue to say that every single problem that we have can be solved by bringing everybody from the outside in. Some things have to be done like that. But it ain't jobs. Like, we're not talking rocket science. We're not building spaceships here. Not in the city of St. Louis. Ain't nobody running around here. I mean, Boeing is, but they not in the city of St.Louis. I mean, seriously, you don't have a gang of people working in these offices that need to go and get a PhD to be able to fill these jobs. You don't have to have a PhD to become a police officer. So when you talk about qualified voters, what are you realistically saying? Because to me, what it sounds like, and I'm not talking about anybody in the Board of Aldermen, because I know this is not just based on the people in the board who feels like this needs to be brought forward. This is the mayor's office, the people who work behind the mayor in the mayor's office, the individuals who was mayor before the mayor became mayor. They are the ones that's running the show. They are the ones that's telling us what it is that we need while we're telling them what it is that we don't need. So realistically speaking, this ain't about residency. This is about control. This is about controlling the numbers, controlling the tax base, and controlling the jobs. And I myself am not for anybody coming in and continue to puppeteer the city. That is a big problem for us. We walk around once again, day after day, knowing what needs to be done, but continuing to say we got to have consultants from Chicago. We need consultants from everywhere but the city of St. Louis, man. We have people going to college every single year. Every single year, they're going to college from the city of St. Louis, and we're not ensuring that we're giving them a reason to come back and utilize whatever expertise that they're going to go get educated for within the city of St. Louis. They do the best that they can to make money and get the hell out of Dodge. That's a problem for us. If we can't retain the people that we got in this city by pouring whatever that we have to give, our services into them, our training into them, our dollars into them. We put millions of dollars in the slate every single year, and you're telling me we can't find jobs? We can't find qualified people to work these simple jobs? That's false. That's false. And once again, it is a narrative that will continue to be a stain on the city of St. Louis. I don't care what we do. We're never going to get an Amazon to come back here if we can't handle our own home. if we can't do what we need to do in our own house, right? Ask the director why we have not had a job for downtown, downstairs in the rotunda. Ask him why the only jobs that we see are posted online. Why do you have to go to the corner hand building and go look on the wall to find out what's available? Why? Why you don't see commercials all over TV about the city of St. Louis is hiring, right? Why aren't we doing what's necessary to ensure that we at least have numbers? I guarantee not one person in this room, not one of us can give us an accurate number of how many jobs we need filled today. I bet not one. If you can answer the question, I would like you to stand up and maybe do so, but you probably can't. Because we can't answer those questions. That's a realistic thing, and that's a realistic ask. We don't even have a number. Not a number. That's a problem for us. They tell us the jobs are filled. We ask for services, but yet we don't know how many people that are needed to be able to fill those services adequately. But yet we want to run to the outside of the city. There has not been, and I've asked, I've asked in a hearing, you can go back and look at the dates if you are that interested in finding out. Why do we not have hiring events? The director has said himself, I've hired people in 1 or 2 days. That's boastful. You're going to boast about it, be about it. Do something about it. If you are really looking for qualified individuals in the city of St. Louis, then we should hear about it all day long. But yet, the only thing we hear is the police need more police officers. We need more qualified individuals. Once again, what are those qualifications, man? Because right now, a lot of them just require a high school diploma or a GED, and for you not to have, some of them, not to have a felony on your record. Why can we not find qualified individuals, man? This is a false narrative that we are painting, that the city does not have qualified individuals to work. If they're qualified to vote, think, and read, then they're well qualified to go out and get a job. We just need to ensure that the training is there for whatever jobs that we are saying that we can't find people for. And once again, when we continue to lose this tax base, that we are always fighting over these tax dollars, maybe that'll be something that opens up our eyes. But you know what? It might not happen, because the people who are falling victim to where those tax dollars are going ain't the majority in the Board of Aldermen, and that's a realistic thing. And sometimes it's good to go black and white, and that's just what it is. I'm not a racist by far, but we have racism that's well and alive in the city of St. Louis, and we continue to walk around like it's something that does not have to be addressed. As soon as you want to say something about it, then as you're talking about hate. Oh, you bringing up hate speech, you bringing up race. That's not adequate. That's not something that's going on. That's not the primary factor or the epicenter of what's going on in this city, but it is. That is the issue that we have within the city of St. Louis. Let's ask ourselves why most of the management positions in the city of St. Louis are filled by whites. Let's ask ourselves that. Let's ask ourselves why 90% of the people cutting grass look like me, making $12 an hour. We want to have that conversation. At the end of the day, we are not doing what's necessary as a city to ensure that the qualified voters of the city has an actual chance to become a part of the working family that we have in the city of St. Louis. We're just continuing to put a Band-Aid on the issues that we have long had within the city of St. Louis, and will continue to have within the city of St. Louis. Right? I've heard more than enough people stand up and say, let's just throw it back on the ballot because let's let the voters vote for it. This has been on the ballot 4 or 5 times. Just like ward reduction. 4 or 5 times. But when we say, hey, let's just throw it back on the ballot, just like ward reduction, let's just throw it back on the ballot and see what the voters got to say. No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to throw that back on the ballot. Why? Why? And then you have the nerve to say also that regardless if we throw it on a ballot or not, the voters are going to vote it down. That shows the racial divide within the city of St. Louis. Why is it that when we have these type of discussions?
Alderman, please state your point of order.
I am on course, sir.
Hold on for a second.
We're not talking about putting back on the ballot on the reduction of aldermen at this time. We're talking about a different bill.
Yeah, I think he's just using that as a reference of 2 ballot initiatives that are before the board. But I will ask you not to get into the details of word reduction, but if you're using it as a reference of two ballot initiatives that are before us, you can, but not any details within that bill, because that bill is not what we're debating today.
Understood. What I am showing is the correlation, because The alderman here is the one who explicitly just stated that let's just throw it on the ballot for those individuals who think we need a revote on it. So I am showing the correlation in between what it is that we do within the city of St. Louis, which is, once again, like I just said, we don't want to have those conversations, case in point. So our biggest issues stem from the divide that we have within the city of St. Louis that we are not willing to actually work on. We're not willing to have those hard conversations. Whenever you want to start talking about the real issues, the root cause of what it is that we're having problems with, everybody want to shut you up. We don't want to have those conversations. What are the root causes of why we are saying we don't have qualified workers? Right? Our education system is failing us. We all know this. Our kids are getting shot. We all know this. This is all part of the issue. But yet we're saying we can't pour resources into our city to make sure that people can get jobs. Jobs that we provide, jobs that we make up, jobs that we seem and deem necessary for the survival of the city of St. Louis. So I stand in opposition to this bill, very, very strong opposition to this bill, especially if we can't have the most important conversation with this city is getting down to the root of the issue and why it is that we can't find qualified people and why are we not pumping the resources into ensuring that we have qualified training or trainers for the people who need to be trained for these jobs. So I'd much rather see a bill on the table that says something about we're going to start an initiative to ensure that the people who need to be trained for these jobs that they're unqualified for get the training that they need so we can have qualified individuals of the city of St. Louis. This has been a narrative for far too long. I bet if I talked about the police for 20 minutes, we'd be all good. All the way straight. And maybe we need to have that conversation. Maybe I should just get up here and talk all day about this. But I'm not. But it's a real thing. This ain't just about police officers, because we can't police our way out of the situation that we are in. We continue to talk about police are the reason why we're bringing this residency bill up. Or we can't handle services, man. All of that is false. We can handle anything that is thrown at us, and to suggest anything other than that is a stain on the city of St. Louis, and we are already stained as a city of St. Louis. We can't even retain large employers. Everybody done moved out the city. What are we going to do to get them to move back? We have to educate our residents. We have to make sure our residents are trained for whatever jobs we are trying to bring up. 10 years from now, everything in the city hopefully will be technologically advanced. But if we're not creating a workforce to take those jobs, then everybody from the outside is going to come in, and once again, we'll be losing that tax base, and we'll continue to lose individuals who are qualified because they're going to take those skills that they utilize in the city, take them back to their homes, build up where they are, and build their families there at the same time as we dwindle in numbers. Thank you.
Thank you all. Alderman from the 23rd. Alderman from the 23rd, we're going to, can you?
No, it's working. I plugged it in.
Got it. All right.
They unplugged it. They hate me. No, and I'll publicly ask again, I wanted to put it back on the informal calendar. I just think this is going to require a little bit more discussion. I don't like well, let's just vote on it and see whatever, because it is an important issue, and I do believe it's going to take a lot more discussion than just coming back on the very first day back to put this out there. We haven't had the chance through it. As almost everybody's aware, I am in support of going back to the voters for the 28 wards. I was kind of hoping these were going to somehow be voted on close to each other. I think there's a lot of debate that needs to go on. I believe that in talking to members of the caucus, they feel that that they're not being heard, and I understand that. I would encourage this to be put back on the informal calendar, and really that's about all I could say. I think that's too quick. I think it's an important issue. I think just an up or down vote is not the answer. I think a little bit more discussion, bring this up next week, the week after, get all the different groups talking. For the most of us, we haven't even seen each other all summer. Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th.
To speak on this bill, I echo a lot of the comments that the Alderman from the 3rd Ward spoke just a little bit ago, and I want to draw our members' attention to the equity indicators report. If we are posting jobs online, we have a score of 37 out of 100 on the equity indicators for internet access in black households, right? So 55% of black households in the city of St. Louis do not have solid internet access. So if we are only advertising online, we are not reaching all of our candidates. We're not reaching half of our city, right? And that's compared to 22.4% of white households that don't have internet access, right? So there's a significant disparity there. We know that the north side of St. Louis is similar to rural Missouri when we look at high-speed internet, right? We have problems that we need to fix there, and we need to be going to these communities, figuring out how we get qualified applicants to come in. If they can't just get online, then they're not going to see that these jobs are there. I also want to highlight, he spoke about city management positions. We score a 36 out of 100 in city management positions on the racial equity indicators report. That means there are 2.6 white city management positions to every one black person in city management, and those are management, supervisory, and decision-making roles, right? And so when we're looking at hiring, this has an effect. It has an effect as we walk through the process of who's making the decisions, who's reading the applicants, who's mentoring our people through their city jobs, making sure that they're the best that they can be as they're coming through. And let's look at police also, right? We are down on police officers, but so is the county. The county police department is down 60 officers right now. The Missouri Highway Patrol is down. It is hard to recruit police officers right now for a myriad of reasons, right? So merely saying that this is an issue that only affects the city of St. Louis because we're somehow so much more terrible or our requirements are making this that much more difficult is false. That's a false equivalency to put out here for you. And when we look at the quality of policing, one of the things that the Ferguson Commission talked about was that that police need to be representative of the communities that they serve, and removing the residency requirement and recruiting from outside the city of St. Louis has a negative effect on who is going to be recruited into our police force. We have a cadet program right now that's working great. There's 60 plus young people in that program, and the majority of them, I believe, are people of color, right? So we're moving towards a position where we're mentoring people into those roles who want to be in those programs. It's going to take some time, but we're working towards that. In the meantime, the police department probably needs to look at maybe this redistricting. Maybe that's how we get back towards fully staffing our areas. If police aren't having to drive 30 minutes across a district to get from one call to another, surely we're going to have staffing issues when that's the problem, right? So there are so many other things that we need to look at here before we pull this escape hatch. I agree with my colleague from the 23rd Ward that this feels a little bit quick now that we're back in session. I know that we've had some discussions about how cities all around the country are struggling to get workers right now and to keep residents in their city centers, right? So they're offering incentive programs, anything from financial bonuses for people who live there to housing assistance, to down payment assistance for people who want to buy homes. Can we partner this with our stabilized homes that are coming through Prop NS funds to incentivize people to buy in these areas? We've got tech companies coming in, again, but we can't fill mowing positions, right? So what's happening in our personnel division? Are we kicking people out of the process before we should? What is automatically rejecting people out? What do our marijuana policies look like? Let's say that as medical marijuana is coming online for the state of Missouri, it is going to be legal to use marijuana. So if our testing and blocks people from being able to have a job because they have marijuana in their systems, but they're legally allowed to have marijuana in their systems, right? We need to be looking at these policies going forward and looking back and saying, who's applying, right? Who are we not reaching? What's happening in our schools? What's happening at Slate? And I'm very glad to see that we have a new executive director of Slate. That is an immense resource for the city. And we need to activate that. We need to push that out there. We need our schools engaged, our community centers engaged. Our rec center programs are doing great right now. We've pumped a ton of money into there. Kids have had safe places to go all summer. And are we outreaching for jobs there, right? Are we directing kids into these jobs there? So I'm still opposed to this bill because I think more work can be done before we take this vote. We have until November 2020. I understand a public information campaign can take some months and that it's good to get that information out there. So I'm not asking that we delay this until October of next year. But I do think that there are programs that we need to look at coming alongside. And there's frankly, some investigations we need to do into our departments to see what's happening with if those jobs aren't being filled, should we be moving those salaries and bumping up salaries so we get higher quality applicants that need a higher salary, right? What can we be doing with that surplus to really move this forward? So I'm just asking for more time to consider this as well.
Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Right now is not as immediate for this bill. We need to take some action ourselves, and the conversation that you had with me about how to move forward directly to get some of these jobs filled. We know we have a lot of positions that are open at the airport and other places, and I think that if we directly had our job fair, because we know where our people are that need the jobs in our wards, and if we sponsored a job fair, like we talked about, and connect the dots with everything else. See, unfortunately, our personnel department is not connected to the rest of the system that operates out here to get people jobs and also give them resources. So that's something that needs to take place as well. And as we talked about that, we know we have some very prominent organizations that we can work with, because they're getting people jobs. They're getting the people who nobody will probably hire jobs. They're getting them prepared for the jobs, and they're getting the jobs, and they're being retained in the jobs. And so what I'd like for us to do, and I had to think about it for a minute because I know we all got so much on our plates, but I like the idea. I would be willing to support the idea if this Board of Aldermen would do their job fair and make sure that we get to the grassroots folks in our wards. Let's make sure that everything they need to be present and appropriate is done so that they can get these jobs. And we know we have organizations that will help us and make sure that they are ready when they walk in that door. They'll have resumes if necessary. They'll be in a suit and a tie. They'll have everything they need, and they'll be able to pass the drug test. Okay? So let's do a little something first, and then we gotta, it doesn't take forever to do this. Let's tighten up with the personnel department, do our job fair. We did it for the first one that was done for NGA. They said nobody was gonna come. And we did that job fair with other entities, with the unions and everybody. We didn't spend not one quarter on advertising. It was all grassroots. 700 plus people showed up. Unions were happy. Everybody was happy.
Alderman from the 21st.
Mr. President, I yield to the Alderman from the 4th Ward.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, 21st Ward, my godson. Disparity and poverty is a sin, one of the biggest sins that we have. I can show you how to save a lot of money. We're bringing in people from anywhere and everywhere to come in and work in our city. And they're already leaving the city with the car. We have thousands of automobiles that leave this city and go park in front of someone else's, in front of their houses all the time. We spend the gas money to keep the cars gas. What I suggest is give every alderman a car as well, because we have to come to work. What they should do with these cars is drive these cars to work, drive your own vehicle to work, park on that lot out there that's empty, and then get in the city car. At the airport, they got one guy out there, a supervisor, that drives one car home, and then when he come back to the airport, he changes and get in another city car. We can save money that way. We don't need to bring in a whole lot of people from anywhere and everywhere coming in and taking these jobs that we need. Like we don't need more police. We don't need to spend any more money on police. We need the policemen that we have to be visible. Crime is that of an opportunity, and it takes the opportunity to raise its ugly head because there's no patrolmen. They are patrolmen. They're supposed to patrol the city. They're not doing it. So when the crime happened, you see every kind of truck, car, lights flashing, blinking, hoopties, Volkswagens. They're all there at the scene. But where are they before the crime happened? Crime is that of an opportunity, and we don't need any more police. We'll need to keep spending money and bringing folks in here from West Hale and down yonder in Missouri, coming in here, don't know nothing about us. That's why we are cat in the corner. We have created this monster, and we got to stop digging a hole. And basically, when I say this bill will pass because we have a racial divide at this Board of Aldermen. And I keep telling you that we have a racial divide. And we vote along racial lines, and we should be more respectful to our constituents that we vote on behalf of them and not on our ego-tripping selves. Everybody's their own little mayor, and I'm going to make an announcement today that I'm running for mayor of the North City.
All right, any further discussion? Alderman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm going to echo some of the comments of the alderman from the 3rd and the alderwoman from the 8th ward. We've been debating this now for over a year, and that means that we've had a year to come up with some plans and a year to come up with some data, a year to do a citywide survey of all of our employees and figure out the things that they need in order to be retained in this city. Is that access to affordable childcare? Is that higher wages? Is that better working conditions or feeling valued at work? We don't know because we have not done that work. There was a news article yesterday about St. Louis County, who is having the exact same issues that we are having with filling positions. Simply eliminating a boundary is not going to solve this problem if we don't actually get to the root causes of what's going on. I can't help but think that this is another ploy to try to break our city. We do not know the financial implications of this bill. We do not know how many people will leave. We do not know what that will do to our tax base. But what we do know is that we have a billionaire, Rex Sinquefield, who is in favor of policies like this, who continually works to bankrupt our city so that he can try to privatize our assets and make money off of them. And I think we need to center that he is a player in this conversation. And if the mayor really wants this to happen and wants this to happen as is, she should go to Rex and she should ask him for the $100,000 that she would need to take this directly to the ballot and go around us and see what folks actually say, because Rex does not have a good track record of passing his policies through our city. I think the other things that we cannot negate in this is our problems with our police department. I'm not sure who would want to work for a police department that is continually making national news for corruption, for police practices that are not the norm. And if we do not actually address these problems within the department, if we continue to put our head in the sand and act like this does not exist, I don't think we will have any easier time recruiting officers. We have to get real about the issues within the department, and we have to work to actually put in some changes so that people will want to work for that department and people in our city can actually trust that department. Another thing to kind of piggyback on what the alderwoman from the 8th ward said about marijuana. You know, I had a conversation last fall with our operations director who told me that a number of people that would otherwise be qualified for positions in forestry could not pass a drug test because of marijuana. We are not only at a place where medical is going to become legal very soon, we're also at a place where Illinois is going to be going recreational very, very soon. And I think we're naive if we don't think that people are going to be going across the river to get access to adult use marijuana and coming back over. Now, I'm not saying we should allow people to be impaired when they're on the job site. But what we do need to recognize is you can consume marijuana and that's in your system for 30 days when you have absolutely no impairment in your system anymore. And so we have to be looking at some common sense changes to employee practices with a very quickly changing landscape when it comes to marijuana drug usage. And then the last thing I'll say is the other plan that we need, the other plan that has not come forward in this is how, if this is to be eliminated, how do we ensure that we do have officers and employees that are connected to our community? That is something else that the mayor's office could be coming forth with a plan to say, you know what, we think we need to do this in order to make recruitment easier or whatever, but these are the steps that we're going to take to ensure that we have a police department and we have public workers who actually are engaged in our communities and understand what it's like to be in the city of St. Louis. These are all plans that the mayor's office can and should put forth. And if they want us to vote on this and they want us to have a favorable opinion on it, then we need the due diligence of having this data. We need to know what the financial implications could be. We need to know what the plan is to ensure that we can develop a police department that people actually trust. And we need to make sure that this is not going to bankrupt our city. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Anyone for the first time? Anyone for the first time? Alderman from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, as an educator, and I taught special education for more than 15 years, I taught children who had learning disabilities too. They couldn't pass a test, but they were just as intelligent and just as dependable as anyone else. I taught children who were emotionally disturbed. They couldn't pass tests, but they certainly could do a wonderful job. I taught the children who have challenges learning fast as other children. These were solid citizens, very behaved people. Shouldn't the children and people with disabilities who can't pass tests but can do the job, let's say as a police officer, they should be, any position, I'm not picking on the police, but let's look at the police. We have 40 police officers who the prosecuting attorney will not issue a warrant, won't even take a warrant from them because you can't trust them. But they passed the tests. They passed all the tests they needed to pass. No problem. Now so we talk about 160, there are 40 police officers sitting down doing absolutely nothing. Who should be, if they can't be on the street, they shouldn't be in the police department. Now the point is, they passed the test. So the issue is not the test. We have a $3.2 million with 30 employees making more than $3.2 million right now. I don't see any services that they are providing. So my point is, we have plenty of people who can pass the test, from those who are disabled to those who are sitting, the officers who are sitting now, 40 of them, who can't even issue warrants, who have passed tests. So if passing tests were a criteria for the police officers, since they are saying the police will do so much, well then they pass the test, but they are failing the duty of providing and protecting, because they're sitting at desks someplace, can't do absolutely anything. So the false narrative of passing the test is just plain wrong. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Let me be perfectly frank. Anyone who believe that letting these jobs go are keeping African Americans, I'm going to be honest, you're keeping African Americans from having jobs. This is another way of using the racist propaganda of saying, in which we came over here kidnapped, came over here after being kidnapped and brought over here as slaves to be workers. After working for more than 300 years under the worst condition the world has ever known, we were workers, denied all our rights under segregation, paid less than anybody else. So we worked harder than anybody for free. Yes, for free. Under slavery, under segregation, and currently, I pulled a furnace when I was a teenager at 3,200 degrees during the summer. So I know about work. So we do want to work. We can work. But the problem right now is that we are not given jobs. We can do any job. And I mean, when I say we African Americans, and white people can too. So it's not the idea of jobs, we're just being denied jobs so that we can fill the prisons, so that we can provide public works for the rural areas. That's what prisons are, mass incarceration. This is the agenda of the people behind the people who are saying, deny black people's jobs so they can go to jail. Deny black people's jobs so they can continue to kill each other. Deny black people's jobs so they can't take care of their families. Deny black people's jobs so that the propaganda at the 5:30 news so that we can celebrate the deaths. The deaths. You don't care anybody. People don't care about children if you can't feed your children, if you can't get a job, which many black people can't get a stable job paying enough to take care of a family. You can't take care of your children. That's why children are being killed, because they are being killed because their parents some are being killed, some are on drugs, and some are locked up for the same thing that we are making legal in Missouri right now. Talking about marijuana in some states is legal already. That's against the federal law. So when we talk about police records, we already got people breaking the federal law, which is the highest law. So law has nothing to do with it. Police record has nothing to do with it. Qualifications have nothing to do with it, because I've taught every grade from kindergarten through high school in every area and also been a principal. So it has nothing whatsoever to do with but one thing. You don't want to see black people with jobs. And if this bill passed, what will happen? It'll create more crime, create more killing, and then guess what? They're gonna say, "Oh, stop killing the kids." You kill them when you don't give parents opportunity. You kill them when you break up families through mass incarceration. You kill them when you break up families because you can't take care of your family. My family would have broken up if I hadn't had a job. I was able to keep my wife and children together because I had a check coming in every Friday from the day my children were born. If I hadn't had a check coming in, I wouldn't have a family. I couldn't supervise my children. So ask yourself, if you didn't or somebody didn't have a job, would you be able to keep your marriage together? I couldn't. Maybe you can do more than I can. I'm just like the average person. I needed a check. And I'm not saying, and I feel that the job, and I'm going to speak on about the need for us to provide a job for every person who wants a job. That is the government's responsibility, full employment. And we can do this. If we can put a person on the moon to start building a house and to live in, to check out Mars, we can put every person on a job. So we not only should be talking about not only not letting people then taking these jobs we have, we should be talking about expanding jobs to zero unemployment. We talk about killings and police. The drug treatment, the reason people are killing each other, the majority is over drugs. The majority is over drugs. What have we funded for drug treatment? Why are we haven't funded zero? We have people locked up in prison instead of treating them in hospitals, having some compassion. When are we going to have compassion? We're supposed to be a Christian country, and we are locking up people who have an addiction. But now it's changing a little bit now because whites, they said crack cocaine, when black people were using crack cocaine, they locked up, just came and just kicked in black people's doors, took the families away. And crack cocaine is the least dangerous drug because the people who use it don't even own a car, most of them. They're poor. And then 6,000 people a year, the last time I read about it, die from crack cocaine, and 6,000 die from caffeine, which I love my coffee too. So, but the point I'm making is heroin, fentanyl is 50 times stronger than the heroin on the street, but they kept locking people up from 1960 on when black people were using it. But fentanyl, and they should treat it it should be treated. But I'm not going to stand here and wait till white people, and I'm saying white people who came to this country and we were forced at gunpoint to become black people. So I'm not going to stand here and sugarcoat it, the suffering that has been imposed on us by the votes, not of all whites, because we've had friends, and we have friends on this board. And we have had white friends throughout our journey in this country, and I want to take this opportunity to thank them. because we wouldn't be where we are without them. So I'm not saying all, and I'm not saying the majority, but because to end slavery, it was our white friends that stood with us through thick and thin. Through segregation, our white friends stood with us, unwavering, through thick and thin. And this wasn't a government that did it. These were independent people who could have enjoyed white privilege and could have enjoyed themselves. And some put their lives, many put their lives on the line in family. But at the same time, I'm asking you, and I think we as leaders have a responsibility to go back and represent our people and give them accurate information. And I think the accurate information is that there's no difference between us. The only difference between us, in fact, scientifically, between any other living things is our DNA is all the same. But the only difference is how it's arranged, whether it's a tree or any other plant or anything else. So us as species, we are no different. What makes us different? And if we take oxygen and water, we take hydrogen and oxygen and put it together, it brings out water. So we don't know where anyone came from, our living things. What I'm saying is the difference is the environment that has been created by this society that has systematically denied African Americans in particular. I don't want to just talk about people of color. We were especially pointed out to be for life in slavery. We were especially pointed out for segregation by ourselves. No other ethnic group of color or any other color but us African Americans were especially pointed out. This is what we see today. Every time a person pulls a gun, a pistol, it is the result of all of that mistreatment that our ancestors have faced and that we are facing today. So I beg you, I ask you to please do not take any jobs away from this community. We don't have enough. Please do not put false barriers. Those are false barriers. The test is a false barrier. One day, some people are frightened about tests. Others, as an educator, I know, don't have enough experience. 10% of the kids in the St. Louis public school system are homeless every day. That means the parents are homeless. Kids came to the school where for many years, almost 30 years, came to school, they ate breakfast and lunch, but when they went home, they were hungry. Well, the parents are hungry too. If the kids are hungry, if the kids can't eat, the parents can't eat. That affects test scores. The kids don't have enough material to practice. If you keep practicing something as an educator, I know you get better at it. But when kids don't have pencils, paper, pencil, paper, I'm still talking about why we shouldn't vote on this bill to stop the job.
Alderman from the 18th. Alderman from the 4th, please state your point of order.
There are a lot of sidebars and it's very distracting. I cannot hear.
All right.
It's very important what he's saying, and we have too many sidebars interrupting and interfering with what he's saying.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Could everybody hold it down as we get through debate?
Okay,
and Alderman from the 18th, I know you're wrapping.
My main point as an educator, I have seen firsthand in different capacities, special educator, regular educator, principal. I've seen firsthand parents who sent all my kids to school. I've seen firsthand why there's a difference between test scores. Let me summarize. Number one, when you are in poverty, which I was born in the most dire poverty you've ever seen in your life, there's no more poverty except starving that I was born in. So I don't want to go make this personal. But let me say this, when you do not have the materials to practice with, you're not going to do as well on any test as that person who has all the material. And as a group, whites have had more opportunities. They didn't ask for it. Nobody asked to be any color. But just due to history. And so when kids come in and they haven't seen a pencil, haven't had an opportunity, not because they didn't want to practice with pencils and paper and haven't had as many tests. And until the 70s, we had 35 or 40 kids in a classroom. And then after that, many of the kids began to be bused and other things, those parents who were more aggressive in trying to get the best education, what they thought was the best education for their children. So the point is, the children that the people who are grown now, who we are talking about giving them a test, are just as intelligent. They can do just as great of a job. So we don't need to test them for policemen. We can test them and prepare them for a test and then see if they can pass it after they're prepared. We can also test them verbally, like it was tried with the fire department here, which was rejected. We can test them to see if they would make good police officers or good forestry people or good anything, any job in the city. That can happen verbally. You don't always need a pencil and paper test. And then who has done the interviewing? From what I see, they're not, and most of these department heads, most of these are white. That's what I've seen. I haven't seen them all. But I'm saying, and even if they were African American, are they sensitive to different learning styles, different testing styles? And then too, is the job required to have a test? Can this job be done without being tested? In forestry, recreation, street department, many of those other jobs, street department, I don't think you need a test to fill a pothole. I don't think you need a test to cut some grass. I don't think you need a test to supervise kids in a recreational program, or to run a program. I didn't get tested when I first got a job as a youth specialist. I was 18 years old. I was supervising kids, and that's how I got started. They just saw me being in leadership and said they thought I would be a good leader. In fact, I wouldn't have been able to pass the test, but I was good. They felt I was good in the community, and they wanted me to lead these children. So tests don't always show what you can do. But once I got a GED, I went on to the University of Missouri and graduated with highest honors. So I learned to take a test. Once I got my BA at the University of Missouri, then I graduated, got my master's degree with straight A's. So I learned how to take a test after I went to school. So I didn't start off passing tests. In fact, I didn't start off passing tests. So just because you don't start off passing tests doesn't mean that you can't learn once you get the opportunity to do the job. So I'm asking you, my colleagues here, let's consider the circumstances in which some of the people that unconsciously, I don't think anyone here is consciously trying to deny African American tests, but the consequences, I'm talking about the consequences are going to be that this is going to hit African Americans the hardest, because when we see all of these killings, regardless as to your color, sometimes we may equate, hey, when this African American male come in, is this person a killer or something? We may equate that because we see so many negative images of African Americans, so this could affect the interviewer's perception. I'm not saying that the person is a mean person or even a racist. It's just that the media is put all that stuff out about African Americans, especially males, all day long, until some people may be nervous, white and black, and may say, well, I don't want this person because he's dangerous or she's dangerous just because they're black. And that's just not because you're mean, not because you're racist. It's just because the media itself has not given it's given a certain image and not given the full background as to why some people act the way they, some groups the African Americans are harming each other when nobody is born a criminal. It is the environment that is creating people who are doing these things. So in order to do this, we must change the environment. After we change the environment, we will we will reduce the crime.
All right, thanks, Alderman. Alderman from the 21st.
So I have none at this time.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was listening to our colleague, the Honorable Alderman from the 18th Ward, expecting him to quote Lizzo at some point in time there, talking about DNA and tests so much. For those of you that aren't familiar, there's a very popular music artist out that kept going through my head there for a moment. But I think the Alderman brings up some very valid points, and appreciate his perspective on this. And, having spoken with my colleague from the 20th Ward, earlier this morning about the amendments that she'd like to have discussed, I think, and I would ask the sponsor if she would be open to, actually, would the Alderman or Alderwoman from the 14th Ward please yield for questioning?
Alderman from the 14th will yield the questions to the Alderman from the 25th.
I will.
Alderman from the 25th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Alderwoman. Would you consider putting this back on the informal to have those discussions pertaining to the amendments? Would you be open to that?
We've been working on this since last session. This has been going on for well over 18 months. I think that we deserve to let the voters decide. I think our voters are intelligent enough to make a decision on this. I would be willing, as I told the Alderman from the 20th, I would be willing to sponsor those bills on separate items. But I think when we put things before the voters, and I'm not saying this, that we don't need to complicate them and muddy the waters with a lot of extraneous things. And someone else in our body asked me about incentives. We can't put incentives into our charter. So we can put these other things into a separate ordinance, but this is a charter change that will have to go before the voters. Simple as that. And we're bringing all this other stuff, and I'll spare you my curriculum vitae, but we forget that at one point in this city, we had the DSEG program, and a lot of our African Americans saw there was other places to live beyond the city borders. That is, according to Chief Hayden, one of the reasons we're having a hard time recruiting police. But this is not just about the police department. It's about the carpenters, it's about the workmen, it's about the building inspectors, it's about people working in the city. When they have to make a commitment to move into the city within 90 days, many of them back off and say, never mind, I don't want the job. So, if everybody would, take a minute, we've heard this, I've had meetings, I've drawn in the police department, I've drawn in the fire department, but, when you don't come to a committee meeting and these questions can't be answered, and as far as being able to calculate the financial impact this would have on the city, I mean, we're chasing rabbits there. We don't know the financial impact of what 40%, only 40% of the residents of the city live and work in the city as it stands now. So we're out here saying, well, we can't hire anybody, and we're trying to find fault with the director of personnel and the processes that go on in personnel pointing fingers, but I don't see anybody doing anything. I've worked closely with them on some issues, and we're getting things done. But, standing here and grandstanding and pointing fingers and blaming does not help anyone. I believe that we need to put this through the voters, to the voters, so that when I get a call that a tree has fallen on somebody's house, I'm not saying, well, we can't hire anybody. We've done everything we could. Let the people decide. Let them make that decision on where we should recruit our personnel. I mean, yesterday when we had the meeting with SLDC, and you understand that only 40% of the people that live in the city actually hold jobs in the city, that's telling. We aren't just a microcosm here. We are a broad metropolitan area, and when we're focusing on inside the river to Pear to hire people, we're really cutting ourselves short. And it's not about black, it's not about white, because there's plenty of people that are black that live outside the city borders, and there's a lot of white people living inside the city borders. So I don't think that it needs to be a racial issue. I think it's a people issue, and that we should let our voters decide. And if those people that are sitting here that want to take everything before the voters, deny their voters the right to do this, shame on you.
So I have one other question. I don't have the board bill in front of me, but when is the expected vote? Is it
November of 2020?
Okay. So thank you, Alderwoman. So I think with that in mind, there is plenty of time to have continued conversations around this. I know the Alderwoman has done a lot of work in terms of carrying this bill for pretty much this entire session at this point in time, and I believe...
And last session.
And last session as well. Thank you, Alderwoman.
Are you done with questioning?
Yes,
with
I'm complete with my questions of the Alderwoman from the 14th Ward. So I think without belaboring this any further, I do believe that, it is worthy of continued discussion around this particular matter. The vote would not take place until November of 2020, so I think that we do have some time to be able to continue those discussions. And if we're not willing to put this back on the informal or refer it to committee for further discussion, then I would have to raise an opposition of passing this out today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th, you recognize the close.
I would just like to explain to everybody that there's no Rex Singfield behind this. This is a conversation I started with the Director of Personnel because I was concerned about some things. And I think that if we are truly trying to increase the involvement and bring people into the city, I've had people tell me that they started to work for the city and they're happy they moved in. So by putting up these borders, I think we're really limiting our horizons on who we can hire. As I said before, the city participated in the DSEG program, which I think is completely phased out now. But many of those children that participated in that program moved beyond the city. They found other housing. They're integrating communities. And so to reverse that process and say, oh, we're only going to hire within our borders, I think we're being very short-sighted and not putting it out there for our voters. Please understand, don't misconstrue that when we put this out there, that we finish this, that we as a body are making a decision about the charter. The charter can only be changed by a vote of the people. And we have went over this more than once. It was through the last session and this session. I would like to ask people to consider this carefully and to consider how they're going to report to their voters when services can't be delivered or that we can't hire certain people. And also I'd like to solicit people that have candidates for jobs to send them over to personnel. Point the jobs out to them. Get them over there. We're hiring. They're hiring. And I would just like to, in conclusion, ask all of my colleagues to vote for this bill, Board Bill 34AA.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 34 as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Boyd? Alderwoman Navarro? President Reed?
No.
Alderwoman Tyus? Alderwoman Ingracia? (11) aye votes and 16 no votes.
By a vote, you fail to sustain the motion. Alderwoman from the 14th, Board Bill 34 as amended fails.
That's the extent of third reading report of engrossment.
Report of Enrollment Committee.
Board Bill 78 as amended.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. First reading of resolutions.
We have none.
Second reading.
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, September the 17th, Public Safety will have a meeting at 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room, and they will meet with the St. Louis Area Violence Prevention Commission to discuss their agency and its approach, programs, activities toward preventing violent crimes in the St. Louis area. Also on Tuesday, Engrossment will have a meeting 10 a.m. in the Leisure Room to discuss Board Bill 75, sponsored by Alderman Boyd. Thursday, September the 19th, Public Safety will have a meeting at 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room, and they will discuss the homelessness in the city of St. Louis with Reverend Larry Rice and other invited guests. Friday, September 20th, 2019, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That is the extent of the announcements.
Before we move on with the rest of the announcements, as you heard Alderwoman Davis announce earlier, Alderwoman Davis and I have been working on a job fair to be held in the Rotunda. We would like to, and I'm sure it's okay, we would like to have the help of any other aldermen that want to be involved in that. Please notify my office or Alderwoman Davis. We want to make sure that everybody knows about the jobs that are available within the city. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, this Sunday, the 15th of September, at the American Legion Post 15 on the Hill, the corner of Bischoff and Edwards, will be their annual fall barbecue from 11 a.m. till 6. Come on by. I get there at 5:30 to start the fires if you want to have a beer with me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield to the Alderman from the 4th.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The division and the contrast of disparity is at Delmar, which is called the Mason-Dixon line. So north of Delmar is where all the disparity is, where the blacks live. The media has divided us into two cities. And you see the news, they say North City and South City, but we have one mayor. So today I'm announcing that I'm running for mayor of North City. I want my own police department and funding for North City because we have been left out of the equation, and we choose to opt out of what the city is doing. Disparity is purposeful. Read Team 4, but I am running for the mayor of North City, and I'm serious. I need some campaign workers. We're going to get this done. I know Gunther's working with me. So I'm formally announcing my candidacy for mayor of North City, St. Louis. God bless.
Thanks, Alderman. Any further Alderman from the 3rd?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. This weekend on Saturday, we'll be having our Art Goes North event. Of course, you know we've had some trying times here, in Hyde Park over the last few months over the summertime, so we want to try to bring some positivity to the area. So we'll have an art show. It's just free to vend, so if you know any artists that would like to come out and have their artwork shown, it's free to come on out and vend. We'll have some free food. We'll have a few food trucks there also. It starts from 10 a.m. at 10 a.m. and it'll be till 5 o'clock p.m. tomorrow, and that's in Hyde Park right at the corner of Salisbury and Bremen, or Salisbury and 20th Street. So we just are asking anybody who'd like to come out. If you don't have anything going on this weekend, we will be out at Hyde Park enjoying ourselves. And on another note, much more sensitive subject, I'm sure you all are familiar with Xavier Usanga, who was 7 years old and shot and killed this year in my ward. That was one of my mentees. His sisters are under the age of 12 years old. They are going through a very, very traumatic experience from what they saw happen. They had to do CPR on their 7-year-old brother who was shot in his face, was shot in his neck. A lot of us don't really understand the aftermath of how people are affected by that. We talk about being traumatized, but being very familiar, and less more familiar, being intimate with individuals who have went through a traumatic experience and watched them go from point A to point B and fall down into a detrimental spiral is something that you really don't get a glimpse of until you are involved. I'm sure some of us know people who have been affected by violence, but it's important for us to understand the aftermath and what happens the weeks after everybody's done talking about it, the months after everybody has forgotten about the children who have passed away. We don't realize what the families are still left to deal with. Their family is going through very, very hard times right now when dealing with the unexpected and unfortunate death of him. So we are looking for some resources. We all are resourceful in this room. I won't go into details over the microphone and throw out what's going on within their family, but they need some help. And if you can put them in your prayers, and it's not just financial help that's needed. We need some therapy. We need a lot of help, man. You never know how important the resources you have are to those who don't have them. So anything that you can think of that you yourself have said, this may be able to help a family, it may be able to help that family. Those girls are starving for every resource we can possibly imagine at this point. So I'm asking every individual in the Board of Aldermen, and if you have resources outside of the board, if you have people that can help, or if you know of a situation of someone who was affected by gun violence and something that you may have brought to the table, we may need those resources for this family also. So let's not forget about these kids that are dying and what the parents need, because those parents still have other children that they have to provide for, take care of, and they are waking up every day looking at empty beds, staring at book bags that'll never be picked up again with books that are still in them from the children who were just writing things in them just a few months ago. We all lost people this summer. So let's, kind of do what we need to do to pull our heads together and help those individuals who are still here and are grieving.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise just to publicly acknowledge some of my colleagues and just people from different department heads who came down to Court Square's 54th annual Downtown Day, which commemorated the 1969 public housing rent strike. I definitely want to thank Terry for helping me take that history and craft the resolution as you did. It didn't go unnoticed, and I didn't realize that you were actually a part of it. So you remembered some of the details of the history than most of us did. There were several elected officials that came by. Our Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, all the committee woman of the 4th, committee woman of the 3rd, all the Bosleys came as they always do, and it's always open to everybody, but it was definitely a good moment. I definitely want to thank the St. Louis Police Department, because we have some crime issues in our neighborhood, and they went above and beyond with mounted patrol, cameras. They did a lot of stuff to ensure that everybody was safe that day, and that's unheard of in that neighborhood. We did not have one fight, one altercation, one gunshot, and so I'm grateful for that, and just big shouts out to the city and, of course, Judge Edwards and our captain, Renee Creasman, who went above and beyond to make sure this family-friendly, fun event that has been going on in the Court Square neighborhood for 54 years went off without a hitch. And I'm grateful for that. And as always, everybody is welcome to it, and I just want to thank everybody for their continued support of that, and also organizations like Urban League and others who actually donated to that, because usually that's done on Court Square Tenant Management Corporation's dime solely, and they barbecue over thousands of pounds of meat just to give back to the community. And so I'm just grateful that everything went well. We did a balloon release for all the fallen children this past summer, and it was just a good time, and I think that's a testament to what we can do in North St. Louis when we have everybody on the same page at the same time on peace. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 21st.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to publicly recognize and thank our Congressman, Lacey Clay. He has officially sponsored legislation regarding reparations. Of course, this is House Resolution 40. Historically, that was led by Representative John Conyers from Michigan. Upon his retirement, Lacey Clay has become the lead sponsor of the legislation, and he officially introduced it this previous week. So I want to thank him for that, and also thank him for participating in the Aldermanic Black Caucus's town hall that we had a few weeks ago. The room was packed with almost 700 residents throughout the metropolitan area who are concerned about the gun violence epidemic. So me and my fellow caucus members are pleased with the outcome, and we thank you, Mr. President, for introducing your legislation concerning background checks and firearms when it comes to this problem. So thank you to all the aldermen that came out. I did see Alderman Gunther, Alderman Rice, Alderman Murphy, Alderwoman Murphy and Howard as well.
And Oldenburg. Alderman Oldenburg.
Oh, he came?
Yeah, he was there.
Oh, yeah. Well, shout out to him, too. Yeah. So thank you for everybody for coming. And again, House, and Alderwoman Green, she was there. Alderwoman Green. But also, again, on House Resolution 40, sponsored by Congressman Clay. Of course, here at the local level, it was led by our former alderman from the 18th Ward, the Honorable Terry Kennedy. So I thank the congressman and the former alderman for leading that fight.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th?
I stand for something.
Uh-oh. Alderman from the 21st, can you grab the mic for the 21st?
James Brown. My condolences go out to the children that lost their lives to violence, and my condolences go out to everyone that lost their lives to violence. The children are our future, and all lives matter. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 14th.
I would like to invite everybody down to the Bebo for the Mexican Independence Day celebration on the street Gravois in front of Mariscos El Gato. And that will take place Sunday starting at 1 o'clock. They'll have dancing, margaritas, empanadas, all that good stuff that everybody likes and wakes up in the middle of the night and wonders why. So come on down.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further? Alderman from 22nd, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to excuse the Alderwoman from the 1st, maybe, and then the Alderwoman from the 6th.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd. Entertain a second on that motion. And entertain a second by the Alderman from the 3rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from 22nd, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, before everybody try to jump on me on social media, that was all in fun because the Alderwoman from the 1st never votes aye for people to be excused.
Yeah.
So don't do that. I move that we adjourn until next Friday, September the 20th.
It's moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th, and the Alderman from the 20th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.